Hello, everybody. We're all stripped down. We're podcast number 3 this week, and we're joined with a couple of great guests for the week. Returning behind me is Spencer Simpkins.
Hello.
And our new cast member, Mr. Christopher Garrett.
Hello. Thank you so much for having me.
The idea of Stripped Down is to be creative, to have fun, and to be thoughtful and insightful and try to think out of the box as much as possible. So this week, we will start with Spencer, who had some questions about kind of a recap from last week, and we'll go from there.
Yeah, so to begin, I want to start us off on a couple topics we went over last week on the podcast, and that would be the topics of self-awareness and individuality. So guys, why do you think it's still so hard for people to really get to know themselves today?
Well, to start off with that, I think growing up, there is a lot of pressure to fit in, to dim your light, to be a part of something, I would say bigger, but it's honestly not. It's just, it makes you smaller as a person when you're in those cliques. Like you kind of limit yourself. You're like, oh, I'm a sports guy, I'm a jock. Oh, I'm a pretty girl, like, you know, that kind of stuff. And it can be very detrimental to your mental health, especially.
I think you made a great point about that. I think we were discussing this earlier, where you're discussing the fact that people try to bully you physically and mentally. And the idea is mentally that they want to bully you into a spot where you're not who you are. And the only way you can get around that is by really understanding, appreciating, and having self-respect. It makes it that much harder to live on anybody else's terms. They have to live on your terms. And I think that's what you're basically saying. And I think that that's why we always value originality and individuality. So that's why we were discussing it last week.
And those are good points. And, you know, a positive or negative, being on the receiving end of bullying or being in a positive mindset, how do those impact your creativity or critical thinking?
Ooh, well, this is tricky because let's be honest, nobody likes a bully, but where would we be without like bullies? Like without a bully, we wouldn't have had Bill Burr, who is one of the greatest living comedians, and he got bullied throughout his entire life. I got bullied throughout my entire life, but it kind of shaped me into the person I was because I realized I'm not going to be this person. It's not like I was getting bullied by my own friends. They're like, oh, Chris, you don't want to do this. And I'm like, no, this isn't for me. Like, that's not a good time to me. So I just think sometimes a bully can push you to go out of your comfort zone, which is great because that's how you sort of learn to find yourself.
Well, I think it's also, when people are bullies, they're actually spreading negativity. And so you can either act in 2 different ways to it. One is you can be negative and take it in the wrong direction. Or on the other side, you know, you can also take it where you could take that negativity and turn it into something positive. And I think what anybody should try to do is they can try to take that negative energy and do something that's different, out of the box. And I think that's why it's so important to be creative, because you're just trying to spread something that's going to be different, that's going to be positive, that's going to be forcing and kind of pointing, you know, humanity in the right direction. For everybody's little kind of participation into it, you know, I think creates for the better good is really like the basic term I can think of.
And, you know, while we were talking about the effects that other people have on ourselves, do you think people today take enough quiet time for themselves, or is it too easy to be distracted?
It is so easily to be distracted. We were talking about this earlier. The world is at your fingertips now with these phones. Like TikTok, you're like, oh, I'm bored. Let's read a book. Let's Google this. Let's see what my friends are up to. Let's Snapchat. Let's Twitter, all that stuff. Or I guess it's called X now. But yeah, it kind of just pulls you away from like being in the moment. You know, if you like go to a concert with your friends and stuff, everyone's obsessed with taking pictures, not being in the moment, not enjoying the mosh pits, not enjoying the noise, the wind in your hair. Like everyone is really interested in the world, I think, but they're not interested in seeing it for themselves. They'd rather see it on a screen.
Or you're saying experiencing it.
Experiencing,
I think
exactly.
That's the better way that I would describe it. It's interesting because I think one thing we would discuss a lot of times is, you know, we're from 2 different generations. And, you know, my generation didn't grow up with technology, so it wasn't always so easy. I mean, I came from the cassette era. I mean, I even came from like 8-tracks were around when I was really, really young. You know, so I mean, I remember when I would travel, I'd take a whole bunch of, you know, cassette tapes or CDs, whatever it was, until really the advent of the iPod. Now that's outdated, and now it's the iPhone, and it's a one and all.
They don't even make the iPods anymore. It's all on that phone.
Yeah. So your era, you grew up, and it's like you're basically conditioned to think in a certain way that's just very different than from the previous generations. And you're the first generation really that grew up where the iPhone, everything is right around you, and it's second nature. Where for us, that took some adjusting to do. And I think that it's easy to kind of, when you're conditioned to think a certain way, is to take you out of that moments where you really self-reflect, understand, because there's just so much information to process. And I think it's hard. I think, people need the right guidance to kind of get through all the kind of misleading roads that can be in that area. And I think when people are going to a concert, for example, I mean, you should enjoy it. You should experience it. It doesn't need to be like, wow, this great post that's, that like, I got to get that one picture and, focus on that. You should focus on, wow, I'm here. I'm with my friends. I'm with my family. I'm with the people that I want to be with, for the most part. Some people don't want to be with some people that are there. But
that's a concert with people.
Yes. Some people sometimes just show up that you don't want to be around. But you still make the most of it and you accept it for what it is.
Exactly.
And I think that that's what's really important. And I think that that's why when you're not in those moments and you're around people, when you're by yourself and you can really take the time to use self-reflection, I believe is a way to really be in tune with the physical world around you. And I think that's just such an important thing I'm worried about that's getting lost by, more and more people. And I think it's great that like Chris and the next generation, can be aware of that and, not, allow this tsunami of information just overtake you.
Thankfully I am aware of that, but it wasn't an easy road at any means. Growing up just as a black gay man in America, it's really tough because you kind of are ostracized. Like I grew up, would say I was in my academic career, 2005, 2019 I graduated. Still back then, like even like now it's, still very accepted, but it was not really talked about. There was no representation in media for anyone like me, not that I knew of. So trying to figure out who I was as a person was especially hard because there was nobody I could go to or even look at, you know what I mean?
Well, that's why it's important. So what happens is you could be the trendsetter when you don't have someone that's there that paves the first road. And I think what a lot of people forget a lot of times is that how difficult it is for that person looking back in history, like Jackie Robinson being the first, black athlete, or for the first female justice to sit on the Supreme Court. It's never an easy road to get there. Looking back, it seems easy once it becomes a popular acceptance.
Yeah.
And people forget all the trials and tribulations that go through there. Yeah. And I think every now and then it's always good for everybody to be reminded that, life shouldn't be an easy road sometimes.
Yeah.
That's why we have these challenges.
And I think everyone nowadays just has it so easy, they don't realize people fought for you to get here. And it wasn't that long ago that women had no rights, black people had no rights, and anybody that was a different color had issues. So we need to be mindful that
Absolutely.
it just happened around the corner, like, babe. Like, we are just getting out of it, so.
Yeah, well, everything's always an evolution and an adjustment period. And
Exactly.
I think that, we're going through that. And it's always good to be reminded that we are making progress, just slow,
Yes.
and it takes time. And it takes time for people to really change their thinking.
Well, talking about evolution, I like to touch on another topic we went over on episode 2 of the podcast, that of originality, and especially originality in titles. So how can something as small as a title shape how people connect to a song or even mislead them?
Okay, to bring up my girl Lorde, I've been telling Antony about her all the time. He needs to listen to this song. It's called Man of the Year, which I'm sure everybody's heard because it's phenomenal. But basically, the premise of the song is, for me particularly, it's who's gonna love me as I am as a person. Because she's going through a time, like Lorde is technically legally a woman. She right now is going through a period where she doesn't know what she identifies as. So what she's just trying to find out is who is really going to accept me and be me as the person. And that's quite the title, Man of the Year. Like, who would have thought of that?
Well, I think that it's interesting because I think it comes from Chris, you're like more of a listener.
Yes.
So you come from a very different perspective or a different angle than what we do as Strippedown, where we're the ones coming up with titles. So I think that it's important that everybody's going to interpret titles in a different way. Mm-hmm. I mean, for me, the thing that's important always is that you have a title that stands out and has not been reused and regurgitated. You could take a title and make it for what it is, like Man of the Year could be interpreted in numerous different ways.
Yes.
I also think that it's so important to set the tone with a great title or a catchy title. And then also, I think it's great where you can always have titles that can be interpreted in numerous ways. You can write a title and have a song that talks about one subject, and everybody thinks you're talking about one subject and means something totally different. And even to the writer, you can have a secret idea that nobody, except for yourself, you don't even tell it to anybody of what you're really writing about. But the main thing is, the one consistent that I, at least, when I would say, like, I really respect people from an artistic point of view, not from a commercial point of view. Commercial point of view, you pick the title that's been regurgitated 7,000 times. Like I saw today, like, new songs coming out, Jump. I mean, Jesus Christ. How many times has that title been done?
I make it jump, jump. The Mac Data make it.
Or what about Jump for Your Love with the Pointer Sisters?
Oh,
like,
gosh,
I mean,
yeah.
it's endless.
Or Crazy, like you told me, Crazy.
Yeah.
Gnarls, like, Sparkly, Beyonce, everybody's done it.
I mean, if you want to be a commercial writer, you can do well. It's then you come up with a simple title that's been done, regurgitated thousands of times, same chord progressions. It already sets the tone that you know for the most part. I mean, every now and then you can be surprised, but I think there's nothing more than being original, and that's something that nobody can take away from you. And having a title that nobody can think of is like, wow. When I think about like titles, you can never, somebody coming up with another title called Billie Jean, that was like a smash hit.
Yeah.
I mean, wow. That's something that, like, if somebody comes up with a title in the future called Billie Jean, you're first going to think of Michael Jackson.
Exactly.
So I think the titles for books, for movies, songs, everything really sets the tone for everything.
But to move on to what you're saying about how if someone writes a song in 30 years, called Billie Jean, they're going to think of Michael Jackson. Will the new generation think about that? Because I was in the car the other day with my cousin. She's like 14. She was singing the, When You Walk by Fantasy by Mariah Carey. But I was like, oh, Fantasy, Mariah Carey? She's like, no, that's Big Energy, Lotto. And I almost slammed the brakes and threw her out of the car.
Well, so what you're saying is that's a very good point. I think the reason why it's important to have these titles not be regurgitated is because it makes people forget about history.
Yeah.
And I really think that people, no matter what you do, no matter what profession you are, I think history is everything. I'm a person that loves reading biographies. I'm actually reading or finished a book that was called Don't Know Much About History, and it talks about little tidbits of history that people forget about that are so important. The moment that gets forgotten, so one day you look back 50 years from now and you have a segment of the society that forgets about the brilliance of Michael Jackson, that's like really erasing history and erasing what I think is very important, because that's why having something that's so creative and having something that just makes that mantle for that reason. And I think that the people that shut off to that, I think actually kind of become very narrow-minded. And I think it's like they end up missing a huge segment of the joy of being alive, which is to be able to see things and really understand the beauty on many levels.
No, I'll take that as a good segue into our next topic, which is technology, laziness, and misinformation.
Oh, don't get me started. All right, where should I begin?
So how does technology feed into laziness and make it easier for people to be misled?
Well, to start off, I also feel like it's an effort thing for people. They're like, why am I going to bother doing this when ChatGPT could do it for me? That's why these teachers, they're all cracking down on this new technology that's helping people, do well in school, but it's not honest work. They're not really learning. So when you have all that tech in your face and just right around you, even teachers are encouraging it now because they're getting lazy. So at a certain point, we're just going to have brain caps to get all the information in our head because nobody's going to want to learn anymore the old-fashioned way.
Well, I think it is important. I mean, I think that just think about the way the word ignorance over the years has evolved. Mm-hmm. When I was growing up, ignorance meant, you just didn't understand, like really what for example, somebody that's different from you is about, and you immediately are at a judgment because of that. And I think today what happens is ideas get thrown around in people's heads through technology, and people are lazy because they don't want to sit there and think through or do the research and dig things out. Yet, ignorance to me gets created when people come and formulate strong opinions based on the fact with such little knowledge or little digging into history, into facts, to really understand what their position is. And so a lot of times people sit there and start rifling out ideas and thoughts that they have, but without really like doing their due diligence and research. And someone that has looks at them and is like, my God, what's wrong with this person? Do you want to be that person? And that's something that we always think about. And that's, I think, one of the dangers today, that if you don't train your brain to think and do the proper research, that and it takes a lot of mental effort to do that. And I think it's very, very important, especially because it's like your generation's the first generation that can be really vulnerable to these groups of people that are basically attacking and trying to almost condition people to be lazy and not have their own thoughts.
Exactly.
And that's why it cycles back to the individualism, because to be individual takes responsibility, it takes effort, and it takes you to think differently and to have some level of courage. And that's why I think, for your generation, the best thing you can do is to try to find time to shut that off.
Yes.
And then when you're talking to people, you come off sounding so much more knowledgeable and so much more rounded. And I think that's very important.
And it's also tough when you see all these people so accomplished, but people have to realize social media, it's rose-colored lenses. Like, yeah, they might be posting they're in Belize and then Dubai and then Tokyo the next day, but I'm like, how do you know they're there at all? Why are they just not at home with the green screen? And just, it also leads to, like, people aren't productive. When you see you're like, I have an idea. I'm gonna, make a hair gel that'll fix your hair right up. But you see all these other people working on hair gels that are gonna do a better job. You just kind of get discouraged and are just like, well, somebody else is gonna do it. Why should I even bother? And it's not great. And that also leads to depression, I feel like, as well.
Well, I have a question about that.
Yes.
When you see people that are in these countries, that are in these great places, that are posting these wow pictures and always trying to wow everybody.
Yeah.
But if they go to some of these countries, as an example, they go to Italy, or they go to to Japan, or they go to China, or they go anywhere in the world that has this great history. These people are not there to really let that history absorb them and learn about anything. It's more of look at me, look at what's surrounding.
They're trying to live their White Lotus fantasy. I'm like, feel the earth, feel the ground, feel everything underneath your feet. You're in this place where so much history's happened, because we're a young country, very young. You know what I mean? These countries have been around for thousands of years, thousands of culture, history, music, food. Oh my God, who doesn't love food? But I also think that also leads to just seeing that stuff in front of you. It can just be actually FOMO, depression. You're like, oh, what am I doing with my life? Because social media, I would say, does not help us as a society, as I would think.
So then the question is what do you do to shield against that when you know that these are pieces of information that are constantly being thrown at you?
And we're conditioned to eat it up. I don't, as much as I would love to say there's hope, but it's who can put their phone down? I forget my phone in my car sometimes. That's how, thankfully not attached to my phone I am. I use it for work. I use it, Netflix, but I'm not stuck to it. I'm not glued to it. I'm not oh, what's this person doing? Ooh, where are they? Ooh. No, I'm not doing all that. I'm not liking your photos. I have Instagram just to stay in there now. Yeah. And if anything pops off and I need to hide, Well,
that's why I think it's very important to, to have these these things that will shield you from these external influences. And I think that's a big danger. I think what you're going to start getting is, there's the books that talk about the fear and anxious generations. And I think part of that is feeding into everything that you're talking about. So the question is always, what are the steps that we can take, or I'm hoping for the younger generations, that they're not going to be overwhelmed, overcome, and then you're going to start seeing people live these lives that are very depressed. I think the one thing you can do is, it's very simple actually. Find a great book that you can read. Find great knowledge.
Yes.
There's always such depth into that. You know, it's not just externally. It has to come from within. And I think that's a big part of like what we're talking about today.
And I dealt a lot growing, I think it was 2020. Social media really became a bad part of my life. It led me to a very bad decision, but it was just the constant seeing everybody else succeeding. I didn't do well in college. I had to drop out. I couldn't afford to work and, you know, do school at the same time. My grades were slipping. And just seeing all these people going off to college, graduating early. I'm like, some of these people graduated in 2 years from Berkeley with honors. And I'm just like, what happened to me? Like, why was I so unsuccessful? And I just didn't realize it's not that I was unsuccessful, but it was that I was lost. I was lost in that sea of social media because all I remember doing was being on Instagram all the time, just swiping, looking at everybody else's thing, wondering when is my adventure going to begin. And unfortunately, I had to deal with the tragedy first. But luckily, I got help. I got out of that funk.
Because you're in I call the show-off generation. I think the show-off generation, you see all the goods. Mm-hmm. You never see the work or anything that goes behind it or behind the scenes. You never see any of the things that are in there, and basically it's done by design. I'm always convinced in order to get people's attention, you're provoking people's emotions constantly. And you do that through fear, envy. You can go through the list of everything else. Yeah. And so I think one thing that's very important is to remind yourself that. So it's always like, what should I do so I'm not going to be provoked so easily? I'm going to stay at equilibrium. And sometimes at your age, when you're doing that, you're going through this, you're a teenager. It's like your brain is not even fully matured at the moment. So it's so much easier to get caught up into that. And I think one thing that we try to do, at least, is remind ourselves of these things. Remind the younger generations that there are things that are great in life that you can do in your physical world around you. Once you stay connected to that, I think you'll be on a better path. It takes a while.
It does.
And everybody goes through a different road.
And it's really hard. It can be really hard, and you feel like you're hitting that wall. You're on that hamster wheel, just keep running and running, but you just have to push through it because there is an other side to the rainbow. Like, trust me. Like, call me Wednesday from Addams Family because I was depressed.
Well, when you're depressed, what you should do is when you're using one hand, you have to learn how to use one hand to express yourself when you're on the mic. That way, see?
Sashay.
So you're going to have to be very right-handed for this podcast.
I have to.
So, yes.
Keep hitting the mic.
That way, yes. So just remind yourself, instead of the two Italian, yes. So.
Well, let's talk about idealism versus realism because, we're talking about the traps of social media and, the ideal that is present in the internet and the information that's so constant today. But there's also a reality involved as well, which is not as bright, not as shining and perfect. So in idealism versus realism, where do you see the biggest risks of people leaning too far into idealism or realism?
Okay, now, Anthony, I do want you to start us off, but idealism and realism, because in my mindset, I have a cynic and I have a believer. So to me, that kind of thinks, I'm the believer. I'm the one that's like, all right, I can get this startup off the ground. Or it's like, let's be realistic. No one's going to loan me this.
Well, I think you're always balancing against one another. And I think one thing that's important is I think, they need to be in balance with each other. And I think that's what you have to have a dream. And sometimes that dream can be so far-fetched, and there's nothing wrong with that. As long as there's something holding you back to be somewhat grounded, to know that, like, it's okay to dream, but at the same time, don't let it get you so far off your path that you're going to forget about, like, you're going to be blinded by it.
Yeah.
And I think that, like, for example, when we were working on a song, and I was doing it with my son when he was really young, he wrote this whole song called Love Each Other that's about this fantasy land that everybody compromises, everybody lives in this fantasy world where they get along and they respect each other, and that's where we should be. Now, the cynic would say, that's never possible. Why are you doing that?
The cynic would absolutely say that.
But at the same time, if you don't have that world to strive to, then you're saying, like, to yourself, why even make the effort? So you need that balance between the two. It's okay to question it and be realistic, but at the same time, it's okay to have that vision that, like, wait, maybe one day people could get along better. Maybe there is a way that people can, not be so hard-headed. They can come down off their high, if they're high chair, whatever it is.
Exactly.
And I think that in the end, we all come from the same source. One day the person you might be crapping on, you could be that person getting crapped on.
Yeah. They could end up being your boss, or you could be their boss. It's just, you never know.
Well, and I think that's why it's very important. So I think that a lot of people get lost. Sometimes that's what we were talking about before, where it links together. Ideas get sort of implemented into people's conscious and their minds through all the technology and everything, and all of a sudden everybody thinks that they can do things that are way out of their realm. Exactly. Like I even know people that, I'm sure you ran into this a lot, especially in your generation, where some of these guys will not go out with girls that could be great spouses. They can do anything. Because
they don't look like a 10, double D lemon tart Kylie Jenner looking girl.
And these people actually believe in their minds that they can
get that. I'm like,
they can get it, and that's their destiny, is that they're going to have that.
Yeah.
And anything below that, they won't accept it.
Yeah.
And is that being realistic? I don't think so. And I think that sometimes you have to be realistic with yourself. It's okay to be idealistic. I mean, the way that all these feeds are always led, that these people are talking directly to you.
Yeah.
Where there's multiple people feeling like, oh, that is my girlfriend or that is my boyfriend.
Yeah.
On any level. And I think that the reality is it's never going to happen. I mean, for many of these cases.
Yeah.
But I also think that at the same time, that's why those things should never change who you are and what your goals are. Sometimes the dream person, you might have a fantasy person in your mind, they could be everything that you think that they could be.
And they don't have the hair color you envisioned. Or they're a little heavier.
I was actually going to say, what if you actually talk to them in person and you realize, damn, this person's lame. Like, they have no soul whatsoever. Like, what was I thinking?
Exactly.
For some people, that could be like, sometimes it's like you don't want to destroy this perfect image that, was basically, that is like sprawled in your conscious. I think that the truth is, the best thing to do is to always be realistic with yourself, and then you find something that's going to be compatible. You never know who and what's going to be around the corner, and who's going to be like the right person that you can get along with. And I'm not talking about just a spouse. This is friends. This is people that you work with. This is clients. It can go to any realm of the world. But you always have to be open-minded to that, and you have to be realistic of who you should be around, and who you shouldn't be around.
Yeah, because some people, you'll have such a great energy, but that'll attract the negative people as much as it will the positives. So you really have to be careful about who or how open you let yourself be. Because I'm a very open person. I'll make friends with anybody.
Oh yeah, you are. We know.
You know me. I'll make friends with anybody I meet at a bar. I'm like, hey, ball of conversation, but I'm not letting them into me entirely. You know what I mean? I'm not giving them all of myself, as you would a partner or a best friend.
Well, I want to add one thing that was interesting about for the first time that when I met you, I think sometimes you can give off a very different external persona than over the time when people get to know you better. And I think that over time, they realize that you have a lot more depth than you laid on with your first impression.
Can I tell you? Okay, I'm so glad you talked about that. Because growing up, my family, they were narcissists and perfectionists. Love you guys. But there's definitely, this kind of goes back to my parents. Growing up, my dad, I would say, his idea of success, good, nice house, couple good-looking kids, good-looking wife, and my mom, same way. She's like, we have this idea. So me and my sister were very forced to present kind of a together look, look at my name, Christopher, Charles Garrett. It's a very generic, boring name, but my parents were like, we need you to be generic, boring so you can get through life, but also you have to hold yourself up. You can't just, let anybody walk all over you. So it's very confident, and kind of Barbie doll-ish in a way, where it's oh, yes, how are you? Yeah, because I'm definitely, when you first met me, I was very, accommodating, very sweet, but, there's, messy parts of me, which I think people love just as much as the confident part, but the confident part can sometimes be a little off-putting sometimes. I will give that, because walking down the street, I'm just, minding my own business, waving at, anybody that passes me, and they're I'm sorry, I didn't think it was that serious.
Well, I think for me, what impressed me most is the fact that I'm always impressed with people that go against the grain. That you're not going to try to live to somebody else's ideals of what you should be. And I think that that's something that I believe is very important. And that's something that I've always respected. And that's why I actually am happy that you joined us on the podcast, because that's the idea. We don't want typical.
Yeah.
And I look typical, but I don't think typical. At least I don't think I think typical.
No,
you know?
you
And
don't.
I think that's very important.
Yeah, you will go off on some of the best tangents, like when we're just at work, and it's the best.
That comes from my mom. She can go off on a tangent for longer than this podcast, and you're not even trying to figure out what she's talking about. So that's definitely, that dreamer mind or whatever that comes from definitely is funneled through that mindset.
And I think we need more dreamers. I feel like everyone's just looking to be an influencer or a party girl, or not as much as, I don't feel like there's not as many people trying to do singing stuff and acting as much. They're just trying to do stuff, whatever gets them a brand deal and a bag. And it's like, no, you need to dream big. I don't know, dream about colonizing Mars. Dream about going to a third world country and helping, Doctors Without Borders.
Well, I think that you have two types of people you're talking about. One is people that dream about doing things that for self-promotion. Mm-hmm. And then I think you have other people that dream about doing stuff that's better for the greater good and for the pushing through mankind. That's really the issue that I think you're hitting on, that I have at least when it comes to art and creativity. Because I think these days people use art and creativity to just advance themselves. And if you do that, your main thing that you're doing is you're going to come up with the same boring titles, the same boring chord progressions. You can make a lot of money. Some people will do it. Very few. People see the success. They rarely see all the failure. But at the same time, you're not really helping the greater good. No. These are things that have been regurgitated millions of times. That sits very, 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 very negatively in me personally. Yeah. So I only respect people that I feel like think out of the box, and I think that really, really want to help other people deep down from the bottom of their heart. And I think that there's nothing better than a virtue. To me, the most proud thing that I would say I am is the fact that I can be a good family man, I can be a good friend, I can be good.
You're a great boss.
Around. Well, thank you for that. You don't have to, I don't think I have to say it. I think you're saying it to be authentic.
No, I'm being dead serious. I've come from a job where nobody cares, and you're.
But I think that the main thing is that you got to look out for people around you. The secret of life, in that sense, is the more you help other people, the better the world is going to be around you. Yeah. So one of the future podcasts we'll do is a song that's actually called "Make My World a Better Place," and I think that's really what you want. The only way you can do that is by doing things that is not just about yourself and about this narcissistic behavior that we have in our society today. And I think that that's why we try to read books. We try to want to have a love for art, going to museums, and not just walking by a bunch of pictures thinking, oh, this is just something that's here that I could just scroll by in 2 seconds, not realizing that if you took the time to look at the brush strokes, you looked at the thought, you looked at all the symmetry, the geometry.
Find where he messed up and fixed it.
There's lots of even little nuances that are supposed to be mistakes. They're great. You got to make mistakes. Exactly. Life's not perfect. So I think that's very important. I think we're leaving Spencer out for a second. I think he's feeling left out.
You left us at a perfect spot, because we're leaving the extremes of idealism and realism, and we're moving into our next topic, which is that of balance, spirituality, and nature. And so, Tony, going off what you were just talking about of, losing sight of what's just in front of you, why do you think we've lost touch with the lessons of balance that nature has shown us?
Well, I think it's very important, number one, I think we were discussing this before. One thing that I really least respect with myself is that, I'll travel around the world and I'll go to places and try to really observe the cultures, respect the cultures, learn the languages of some of the places. People that don't know, I can actually speak perfect Chinese. I can speak Spanish pretty well as well, but that also helps you understand the cultures that you're going to. But I think if you look at certain countries like Bhutan, we were talking about this, that they don't have traffic lights there. Oh. And the reason why they don't have traffic lights in Bhutan is they felt it's too impersonal. And I think what they're saying deep down, to the world here, is that the world around you, the physical world around you, is beautiful. When you sit there and stuff your face in the phone all the time and scrolling through mindless stuff, you're losing out on this whole world and this connectivity. There's so many of these great ways that I think that the soul of the world is trying to talk to all of us. That's why you go to the Grand Canyon. That's why you go to Mount Kilimanjaro.
Yes.
That's why you go to these fantastic places in the world, not to just sit there and take a bunch of selfies and show it off to your friends like, ooh, look, I'm here.
No.
It's more about being reflective and enjoying it and being like, wow, look at the sunset here.
Being in the moment.
Gorgeous. And really doing that. And I think that that's why a lot of people are so easily lost with spirituality. I think there's they keep thinking of spirituality as this old way of being tricked through the centuries, through religious means and ways to control people. But that's not the type of spirituality that we look for.
No.
When you really play authentic music, really what Strippedown is about, it's really about connecting with the people around you through instruments and not sitting there and doing it. It's whatever way really your medium is. Mm-hmm. But when you're doing it from a very, very, very rooted, raw source, you feel it more. You feel connected to the world. And I think that way you shield yourself from negative influences that can go around. And I think that's very important.
And that could be a good coping system, because spirituality, it doesn't have to be like religion. You don't have to be Catholic, Christian, Jewish, anything. It could just be going to watch the sunrise. Like me and my friend did that every day for a whole summer. We would just drive to Malibu, get some pancakes, and just watch the sunrise. And that would just get us through growing up, because we had just graduated high school, didn't know what we were doing, freaking out, and that just grounded us and brought us back. And we were just just listen to music.
Yeah, well, we do that. Why do people go on family vacations? The best part of our vacations, especially when
just
my family goes to a beach vacation, is this is something that comes straight from my stepdad, who I respect more than anybody that I've ever known, R.I.P. His favorite time of the day was the last, right before the sun was going to set and everything was calming down and there's this spirituality, and then you slowly watch the sunset, the family gets together, they enjoy this amazing weather, and that was always his favorite time of the day. It's going to resonate in everybody differently.
Exactly.
But I think that's why messages and everything resonate differently in everybody, and I think it's very important that you find that thing that resonates in people. And the problem is a lot of people always feel like they have to force something on everybody. Wow, I feel this. If you can't feel that, what's wrong with you?
What's wrong with you? Oh my God, kids grow up with that with religion. My mom tried to push her religion on me. I'm like, Mom, this is not for me. This is for you and my sister. And it worked out great for them, but it wasn't for me. I didn't have that support system, because it really is a support system in a way, as much as kind of a sanctuary.
But religion can not always be
religion.
It can be for some, look, we have Lenny behind the camera. We always discuss his religion is technology. He loves all of his gadgets.
Listen,
I mean, look, church is great, but Best Buy might be better. Now, that might not be for everybody, right? But that might be for Lenny.
I'm like,
why knock it? That's what I'm saying.
I'm like, God and Jesus might not help me, but a new Hermes bag might.
Yeah, well, look, if that's what it's going to do, what does it for one person doesn't always resonate for somebody else.
Yes.
And the other thing is try to at least understand why. And I think that it's we always think that everything has to be rigid in one way. Mm-hmm. The idea is to have this balance between being flexible. I actually read, believe it or not, I've read everything between the Bible, the Torah, the Quran, and for Buddhism is the Tao Te Ching, which is the way of the Tao. Okay. And there's always these great little passages that connect you to nature, and I think that's why I like reading these passages. They're very relaxing, and one of them is very simple. It's something similar. I'm not going to quote it word for word, because that's not my style anyways, which is, the water flows of a river, be flexible like a reed, not stiff like a trunk of a broken tree.
Yeah.
And I think that's the whole way of life, which is you got to kind of flow with things, and you got to what's going to work for one person is not going to work for the next person. If it works for something that's different, it's just for some reason I think that a big problem we have is people can't think in an opposite direction from the way that their world is around them.
Exactly. There's this old show I used to watch. I remember it's called Adventure Time. It was a cartoon. It's pretty SpongeBob-ish vibe, not going to lie. They had some adult topics about. And I remember one specifically was, this girl said, some people are built different. We don't need to understand it, but we do need to respect it. You're not always going to understand another person. But I still got to respect it. My sister, I don't understand how she lives in a mess. Love you, babe, but it's gross. But I got to respect it. She is part of my household. She pays half the mortgage, so I gotta ride with her.
That's always the way we're going to be. But I think, one of the great biographies that I remember reading was about the Wright brothers. David McCullough is one of the great biographers. Anybody that would read him should read John Adams, Truman. But he also does these other ones that are about the Wright brothers. And the main topic that the book had was that it actually came from the Wright brothers' father, which is one person's duty in a society is to basically not trouble the people around them. To do enough where they're helping the society around them but not trouble them. Like to some degree.
Yeah.
It's actually written, it was a perfectly written statement. I wish I had it here.
Yeah, you can't be trifling though.
But part of it's also, the only reason, I would only disagree with that to one degree with your sister is if that problem becomes into your territory and becomes a problem for you, then she's got to make the adjustments. But if it's in her own realm,
Yeah.
then fine. As long as it's not hurting anybody, then that's not a problem. But it's when it's
It was hurt. Unfortunately, it was coming into the kitchen, the community areas, which I was having a problem with. But her own room, I'm like, good, do your thing, girl. I don't care. It doesn't bug me. But when you share your space with somebody else, it's very important to
respect. I think it's
respect.
very important when you look around the world and you see people like, that are not being good contributors. The world is made of producers and consumers.
Yes.
And you have to have a balance between the two, and people have to identify that we're not done by, as far as like our physical differences from the outside, even from a lot of times our mental differences. It's either you want to add and be productive to people, or you're going to be a taker.
Yes.
And if you want to live your life being a taker, then that's the way you're going to be remembered. At the end of the day, what your actions are in your life is the way you're going to be remembered, and that's the way it's going to be carried through. And I think if you want to be that person and you don't care, that's fine. But then it's like, don't let it bring down the people around you. And I think that's always a problem.
And there's been a few friendships like that with me. This girl was just at take. All she did was ever take. And it's just like, I've been a great friend to you. I just needed to lean on your shoulder emotionally. Like, she's talking about such superficial stuff like, oh, am I going to be able to go on this trip after college? Oh, does Jason like me? And I'm like, babe, I'm about to have to go to court with both my parents because it's a whole homeless situation. Like, win or lose on, during that court situation, one person's life completely would have changed. And she's like, oh, you shouldn't really complain about that. Like, she was like, you're 21, he hasn't had to pay alimony since you were 18. I was like, babe, alimony and child support are two different things. I know you're got a single family home, but come on, I'm just looking for a little support.
So then it comes down to one question. That means that right there you should know that it's hard because you have to detach and you have a history, but at the same time, then you know right away that this person is authentically a friend of mine, someone that's going to be there for me, or they're not.
They weren't.
And if they're not, you cut the line.
Dude, she literally did not answer my texts and then went to Coachella for 3 days. And I was like, so you can post all over social media, but you can't check on me to figure out if I'm going to be homeless or not. That's cool.
Then those are the people you
I was
get
like,
at.
so that was done. It's a wrap. And why did my life get better after that person was gone? They were taking energy from me that I didn't even realize it. Because I was just so enthralled with that person, like you said about me. She had that Barbie doll, good, gorgeous Kylie Jenner looking person. She just presented such a mystique. I wanted to be around it. And she kind of liked mine too. So we kind of made each other better in a way, but also it wasn't a long-lasting friendship.
Yeah, well, as soon as you identify that, in my view, people that are takers are always going to bring the people around them down no matter what they are. If they look better on a physical level, it's going to be that much harder to resist for a certain point. But then again, the more you involve yourself in that, the harder it's going to be to detach, and it's going to only take you down that much worse.
Yes.
And I always believe, my thing is I'm sensitive to people's energy around me. I only want, and I've always wanted this, to be around people as much as I possibly can help it, that are positive and that are constructive and that are helpful. And you will never see people around me that are like that.
Yeah.
And anybody, sometimes you're going to run into like somebody who's going to say something wrong. That happens.
Kill them with kindness.
But yeah, you can always at least go back and say, you know what, who are the people that this person surrounds themselves with?
Yeah.
And if you can see, for example, somebody comes from a good family, or somebody surrounds themselves with good friends, or somebody surrounds themselves with quality people, it's rare, unless they're such an amazing con artist and phony, that they can actually get around that. But then ultimately, who does that really hurt in the end? Them.
Yeah.
Right? So that's why.
And I reached that threshold. I kind of had to realize, do I want to be this character I've built for all these years? Do I want to still stay in here? I'm not happy. It's making me depressed. Nothing is good to come out of it. Or do I want to be my honest and true self? And from there, just everything took off. I found a great job. Me and my sister decided to get a house. And just being yourself helps. Because even when you're like at your worst, you still can trust that you've done everything that you can.
Well, I think what you're saying is that, look, everybody will have a certain standard that they put themselves at. And sometimes the problem is when the standard is forced to you, where it's like the only measure of success means you got to be worth $100 million, and you have to be driving Ferraris and this and that.
And have 3 girlfriends in every state.
But what happened to like the measure of success of being more humble in your achievements? You know, just like simple things like, I want to make the world around me better. Yeah. You can still do that, and you can still, over time, achieve material wealth. There's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah.
But I think at the same time, it's kind of the way you go about it, the way you present yourself. I know people that have, obviously in this area, that could be worth so much money, yet the only way they're thought of is in negative light.
Yeah.
And is that really a good thing in the end? And I think we could think about that.
Yeah.
I think, Spencer, maybe another question? Sorry, we're kind of leaving you out there.
Yeah, sorry, babe.
No, you're fine. You're fine. Well, you both brought up great points about stories and lessons learned, be it in pop culture or be it in a great biography. But I'd like to hear more about the story behind some of your music, Tony, specifically about Blend Into One. So what is the deeper message behind the song Blend Into One?
I think it's interesting because, sometimes we take songs where I would actually write them out with my kids. And I always believe it's great to take their angle from a younger generation, and then me as an older, wiser, have a different perspective of the world, right? And I think part of it, what I want to teach them is that, for example, is to really respect, like in Chinese, you have a word that's called xiaoshun. And I think what that means is that, you always want to be respectful to your elders. Mm-hmm. You always want to give back to them, that they're the ones giving to you. And I think the song itself, first of all, starts with the energy source. I think number one is we all come from the same energy. So why treat everybody around you negatively when we all come from the same source? There's no other way. We're all just energy anyways. Mm-hmm. I think the song in the Blend Into One keeps deducing you back down to the core of who you are. So like another group of books that I loved reading the great psychologist Carl Jung. He always had this thing called the process of individuation. It's very difficult for most people to do that. That means you're trying to figure out who your true inner self is. And most people are scared because we're all made. So we're connected through basically what's called the collective unconscious, as according to Carl Jung, and he would map out our psyche.
Yeah.
The collective conscious means we look at a camera and say, oh, that's a camera. How do we all know it? Is through that same experience that's shared through our collective unconscious. What I think is important is that the more you go into there, you find there's parts of we're bad. We're sinister. Yeah. And a lot of people can't handle the fact that they might or associate themselves with people that have done bad things or have bad thoughts. And I think what's important is to get through that. And I think what the song is talking about is if you can dig through the fact of understanding yourself and knowing that you're created of everything. I think in Hinduism, you're created as 2/3 good, 1/3 bad. Yeah. The world wouldn't be interesting if there was no drama in the world, if there was no problems.
No, yeah.
And so it's kind of like how you deal with it through understanding. And I think that's part of like why we wrote the song. And Blend Into One means everything basically at the end of the day becomes that one thing. And I think that's what's I think it's very important to how I'd say it. It's like such a simple song on one surface.
It's got all these layers,
but it's really deep. So actually, the first time we wrote that, I remember my kids were helping out, and we were talking about the importance of passing knowledge. Mm-hmm. And I was saying, for me, I feel very grateful that I had great mentors in my life. They're still alive because they lived through me. And I'm just trying to teach you guys the same type of virtues so one day you're going to be able to do the same with your kids and their grandkids and pass that on. And I think that that's what's very important.
And that's what's passed down. Like, through like people, how people are like, hate is passed down. Well, let's try not to do that. Pass down this stuff. Pass down the kindness. Pass down the recipes. Pass down the things just your family does. Like my family they're really kind people. But I'm just like, but I know all of them, and they all have ulterior motives one way or another.
Yeah, but in the end of the day, there are going to be good values. Everybody's going to have either the good or the bad values, and you kind of have to roll with the punches. I think for me, I'd rather try to, at least I try to instill to my kids, look, your parents are not perfect. You're just somebody else in the world. We always hold our parents as the standard, as the pedestal, because they're the ones that are leading us and guiding us through our early years in the world where we don't know what's going on. But I also think what's important is once my kids realize what we were talking about, I remember this. We were in my bedroom. We were practicing songs we do, and they started crying, like uncontrollably when they realized that the song's actually about death. But I reminded them that it's not just about death. I mean, the way my son will talk about it, maybe in a future podcast, you said death, and that's not it.
He just went death.
Yeah. It is, but it's also about rebirth and life. And I think it's very important to understand that. I think what they were worried about is it was the first time in their lives where they were like, oh my God, what's going to happen with us when my parents are not around to be there to support and encourage and help us grow? And I think it was really scary when that thought really hit them hard. But that was the purpose of the song. But it's okay. It's like you're always going to have the shepherd that's there to at least put it in the proper perspective. And then one day, the things that you do that are good and helpful to people will just keep getting passed along. That there are a lot of good people in the world, regardless of all the craziness like we talk about with technology and the younger generations and these people flaunting all this garbage, and they're just trying to do things for self-promotion or branding and all these different names. But I still believe at the end of the day, it comes down to yourself.
Yeah.
And if you can either deal with yourself or you can't.
And I'm curious about when you said passing down. Would you say as a parent, you pass down lessons you learned from your own parents, but just workshop them more? Because I'm sure, your parents wanted to teach you a valuable lesson, but it just wasn't executed in the correct way. So now you, as a father, can execute it properly because you kind of want to learn from your parents' mistakes, in a way.
I think people need to learn from their own mistakes.
Yes.
And I think that as a parent, you want to make sure you put those mistakes into proper perspective. We're constantly growing and evolving at all stages of our lives.
Yeah.
There's things that you'll know, even though you're younger than me, that it'll take me years to find out about. And I don't need to sit there and have so much pride of admitting that I don't know about these things or I'm wrong or that's fine. I think it's important that I think you'll see in the way that I prefer personally. I don't like to micromanage.
Okay.
I don't like to sit there and try to control my own kids and be a helicopter parent.
Yeah. You don't even do that at work.
No, I don't do it with anybody because
you trust us to get stuff done.
The only way you improve is you have to learn that mistakes are okay.
Yes.
They get made. They might not be fun to go through.
No,
that
trust
people
me,
know.
it's not fun.
But we all go through that.
Yeah.
But it's that kind of a lesson that sometimes you have to let things kind of happen naturally and organically. And that's the same in anything else. Everything in our world is connected in that sense. That's kind of like the general topic of songs like Blend Into One. And I think that like the reason why we wanted to kind of do the podcast is so when we're writing lyrics out, at least from our standpoint,
Yes.
they're very, 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 very well thought out. They come out, they need to be, but it's like they need to settle. It's like anything else. You can't just like rush through the process and write a bunch of mindless garbage.
Like, do we need to take this out? Can we put this in? Move it down for lyrics? Or
But there's always going to be like a thought behind everything and a general topic that needs to be addressed. And I think that identifying that is something that's really important. And I think one thing that's what the song was generally about is like we all sing it together. But then again, at the very end, you can have it where everybody kind of separates and becomes individual.
Yeah.
And that's the idea is you're supposed to go on your own path. And your own path is never going to be the same from two different people. But the most important thing is, like this gets back to what we were talking about earlier, experiencing everything. Having that experience is going to teach you everything. That's what I love about traveling.
Yeah.
Traveling is going to push people to their, like, to every they're pushed out of their comfort zone. Mm-hmm. And
They're thrown into situations, a place they've never been before.
Problems
Airlines.
Airlines cancel. Weather delays, whatever
Like,
it is.
luggage got lost. Got to go shopping. Got to know the good spots to get cheap clothes.
And it's how you present yourself and how you can deal with it at the end of the day that I think really is a true test of character.
Yes.
And you're going to go through that in life. Some people, they might present themselves as this perfect person and perfect celebrity, whatever they are, but yet I've run into all these people over the years. They don't always handle adverse situations well. So then it leads to the one question. It's like, what are these people really made of? And I think that where does this come from? Where does this behavior? Who approves this behavior?
Exactly.
And I think that it's a combination of lots of things. There's no one answer for everything.
It might be for their image at the time. It might be to promote something. It might be because they're having a bad day. You don't know.
But I think it's very important, I think, to always at least try to take some time to think about it and put things in proper perspective. And I think that's what the song ultimately and Blend Into One is about. And that's why I love it. It's a simple song. It's got to be simple.
Yeah.
Yet, sometimes things that can be very simple can actually end up being so complex, but it has to be thought through. Mm-hmm. And then you can kind of see the underlying themes that are constantly coming around. And every time, even when I listen to it, I'm like, wow, I thought of something that's like a little bit different with the song that I wouldn't have thought of before. And so I think that's what's, you can listen to like good lyrics like that.
Are you guys on Apple Music or just Spotify right now?
We're on both.
Right.
Oh, okay.
We keep kind of churning out different ideas, but I think the main thing is, good ideas and original ideas, are like always taking every influence you have and then doing something that's in your own spin, but doing something that's just not generic.
Yeah.
And for the right purpose. And the right purpose is to make people think. That's really ultimately what I like to do. When people think, they're considerate, they're courteous. When people don't think, they come out unaware. They, can be very inconsiderate. And I think sometimes just very, very simple common courtesy goes a long way. Sometimes like when I go to Starbucks and just hold the door open for a bunch of people walking in, like, thank you so much. These are like little things you can do to people.
You see, an older woman, she's struggling to get, like, people in the grocery store will come at me, all like older people, they'll be like, could you grab that, box of cereal at the way top? I'm like, sure, baby, like, here you go. Like, no problem.
And I think that's a good thing. Everybody, look, our world is going to go in these different kind of evolutions. In the 1950s, it was cool to be bad because everybody was goody two-shoes.
Got the greasers and all that jazz.
Then there's going to be a time where it goes in the reverse, where everybody's so bad and everybody thought it was so cool to smoke cigarettes and treat people like garbage, that you need the opposite of that.
Yeah.
All of a sudden, it's like, okay, we need people to be good. So it's kind of like the yin-yang, whatever
Yin-yang.
it's as pronounced in English.
No, how do you properly pronounce it, though?
Yin-yang.
Yin-yang? Okay, well, I'm going to start saying
That's
that now
that
that I
swirl
actually
with
know.
like the black and white.
Yeah. Really? I know you think I have a tattoo, don't I? Pretty sure I
Yeah,
have a
but I'm
tattoo.
sure it's on there somewhere.
I'm sure it's somewhere.
I can tell you I don't. I don't have that tattoo. I'm
Please
like,
get it. I'll pay for it.
Well, let's move into one of your other songs, Love Each Other. The themes I got from Love Each Other were that of idealism, nostalgia, and compromise. So why is compromise a recurring theme in this song, and why do you think compromise is so hard for people?
You could start with compromise, and then I'll respond to it, Chris,
With
the spin of how we discussed it in the song.
Compromise is very hard in people because sorry to quote my girl Dakota Johnson, but people are people. Nobody wants to lose a fight. It's always a battle, especially when you're trying to compromise. Like, I'm trying to compromise with my sister and we're butting heads and it's the easiest thing in the world. But you just let your own ego and your own idealism get in front of it. You're like, no, this is the way we should do it. And I'm like, yeah, this is the way you would do it if you were handling it separately, but it's a compromise, babe. It's two halves. We got to come together to find something that's going to work for both of us. So I think it can be a lot of pushback when someone's trying to do that, because I was pushing back on it.
Well, it comes back to a simple question. I think when you're born, the question is, are humans born good or evil? And it's a very difficult question because there is really no right answer. It's very subjective. But I'll ask you this question first. Like, I don't know if you ever played the game Medicine Ball, where there's a medicine ball in the middle.
Oh,
and
yes,
and
and then you go under it.
Okay.
Yeah.
No, you have to roll it into like you or your teammate's circle, and that's the team that wins.
Oh, no, I don't think I played that then.
But just imagine you have two babies on a mat, like on an exercise mat. And equally between them, you put a toy that is very desired between those two babies. Now what's going to happen?
They're going to fight over it.
Yeah, and are they ever going to compromise over it? They're going to fight.
They're going to compromise until one of them gets bored of it, and then the other's going to pick it up. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You let it get to a point, and it's like,
But it also could depend to some degree on their baby. But no matter what, if they both want that toy so bad, and it's going to be unrelenting, it's going to be a while before one of them. They're going to basically fight and argue and, struggle over it.
I had two grown cousins of mine fight over a sock, and I ended up getting a head full of a phone in the back of my head, bleeding.
Yeah, so
people compromise at any point in time, or not compromise, fight about it.
Well, that's where this idea of the song started. It's because if you have two kids, as you've seen with your sister, you can argue, and a lot of friends that have had siblings, they argue. It kind of started with that with my two kids, and the idea was we were trying to find a way where they could actually compromise. But we kind of use it on a greater scale, that it would be great if people learned to just not let themselves get in the way, let their stubbornness get in the way, let their competitiveness. So we talk about human competitiveness, that it's like all we want to do is we always want to win. We're programmed to win.
Yeah.
Go to Africa and look at the natural world and see animals fighting over the prize. The two lions fighting over the
water
lioness.
hole or something else.
They're always going to be in competition for those things. I don't know if that's necessarily
Apple,
good
Samsung,
or bad.
Everything.
Yeah, I don't know if it's necessarily bad. But the one thing that I think as humans that we do have the ability to do is to kind of take a step back and be able to
think about it and breathe. Because me and my sister, we really got into it. Like, I didn't see her for 2 weeks. We live in the same house. Like, she was gone and then I was gone. And just taking that time to step back and be away from each other and really think about it and be like, is it the end of the world? Do I want to literally have her move out of this house and then I have to move out? Like, do I want to
If you don't compromise, what happens?
It all falls apart.
And who wins and who loses?
Nobody.
Exactly.
The house wins.
Yeah, well...
And to go off what you said earlier, are people born good or bad? It's born wicked, Anthony. Come on.
Wicked.
But no, I don't know. Bad people exist. Obviously, bad people exist. I don't know if there's any, good people. You know what I mean? I think people are just people, and the choices you make go with, I don't know what I'm trying to say. I'm just like, there are good people, but it's like, are you good for the right reasons, or, are you just trying to seem good to everybody?
Well, think of it as a spectrum is the way I would look at it. Because I said, earlier, we're all made up of good and evil, and we're the combination. The sociopath allows the badness and the bad traits that we have as humans just overtake themselves, whether it's in their brain where they have no way to stop it.
Yeah.
So they're the extreme cases of being bad, and that's what you would say. If a sociopath takes over a country, you get a dictator like Stalin or Hitler.
Psychopath, really. Sociopaths just are devoid of emotion entirely. They just have no reason, they're just like...
But there's also some people that will eventually, because of the system and the situation that they're put in, they can end up that way. I think with most humans, the typical human, I would still say, is that usually we're made up of good intentions. We wouldn't have organized and civilized society without it.
Yeah.
I just think that the hardest thing is, in order to create a better world around you, is people sometimes have to, I hate to sound like the bigger person, but sometimes you have to make some level of sacrifice, or do something that's a little bit out of the normal realm in order to progress. And I think that that's what the general topic of the song is, as far as love each other.
Yeah.
And I think that, again, we talked about it earlier, that it's, you want to set at least an image of what you want to see the world to be. And hopefully that image for most people would be something that's good.
Yeah.
And good for many people. And you take your path to help people get there. But at the same time, you have to be cautious about it, right? At one point, if you're too extreme on one side and you don't do it in a balanced way, that's where, you start taking these good intentions, and people can always be around to be opportunists to twist it around.
Yeah.
But it's kind of goes back to like the French Revolution, where it's everybody wanted liberty, yet if you spoke against it, people would want you dead.
Yeah.
But then so it's like the
Like
same
the
thing
join
as
us or die
balance
with the
acts.
independent. Yeah.
So that's why it's a very important virtue to set that image, but also have a very balanced and open-minded approach in going there. And I think that's one thing that's very difficult for a lot of people. Don't forget, we look at why influences are so strong on people. Conditioning can be so strong. There's certain images that get implanted in people's minds, and it is very, very difficult for them to ever evolve out of it.
I think what the last thing you just said, Tony, was just contributing something positive to the world. What's something simple you think people could do more of to make the world a little better?
Well, I think it's written in the song. So, one day if somebody would listen to it, they'd realize that number one, the ultimate idea I think we would have is you got to be sensitive to yourself, and you just want to know how you want to be treated.
Yeah.
And I think you treat people the way, equal to the way that, you want to be treated. And it's as simple as that. You try to be good to people. You don't want people treating you, disrespecting you.
Yeah.
They talk about it a lot of times where the main thing is if you respect yourself, you're going to respect the people around you on any level, even people that don't deserve respect. Mm-hmm. But you're still
cordial. You
still have to be above that.
Yeah.
And I think it's very difficult for some people. I think people let their emotions, they let their various issues get in the way of themselves of that. So I think that in that sense, once just treating people with respect, even we work in a field where people will try to rip into you personally.
Oh yeah.
And try to make you get off your game or try to really provoke you in the wrong way. And the one thing you want to do is don't play into those things. And try to be respectful. And in the end, even if it's someone you never want to talk to, even if someone you want to say, go F yourself.
Yeah, literally.
But it does that really help?
No.
And I think that's one thing I would say that what we write about is to try to make yourself above all that.
No, I remember being, at the restaurant as the host stand, you'd have guests come in popping off at you for no reason. It's dude, you just walked through the door. And as much as you want to be get the out of here, get the hell out of here. I took a pause. I would always pause and just go, I'm going to give you a moment to breathe. Why don't you come back and speak to me like a human? Let them breathe. Because that just left them in shock. It's what? I'm yeah, you were talking crazy to me. And you're not going to talk crazy to anybody in here.
Well, I think the main thing is, for a lot of people, which would be great, is if they really took the actual reflective mirror to look at themselves and their actions. Sometimes I think that then they would realize how foolish that they would end up looking. We have another song that we finished that talks exactly about that, which many people don't realize, how damaging words that they can use. Mm-hmm. Just damaging that their physical actions, just on a smaller scale, trying to intimidate people through the wrong way.
Yeah.
And I think that sometimes it's really, look, ultimately it's going to come back to just reflect negatively on themselves.
For sure.
And
you're going to be thinking about it. You don't want to end something like that. You don't want to start a conversation like that. You'd rather be in a position where it's I know I was completely nice, cordial. I did the best I could. They're still going to be an asshole. That's them. Because then you can just wash your hands of it and be all right, well, that was them. So it's not going to kill me. You can't let that infect your energy.
Yeah, well, and I think it's very difficult for a lot of people because I think the other thing is we do live in an age of anxiety. Mm-hmm. I think a big problem is that from that, it only breeds negativity in that sense. And so anxiety is a definite feeling that we all have, but I also think it's how you ultimately can control and deal and understand it. Usually calms it down to that degree, and that's why I think self-understanding is great. It all cycles back into if you understand yourself, you respect yourself. You respect yourself, you respect the people that are around you. Mm-hmm. Ultimately, they're going to be happier. And I think that that's what a song like Love Each Other is about. Ultimately, the song really should be titled Love Yourself. Yeah. But see, the problem is Love Yourself can just sound like a huge narcissistic, I'm so self-absorbed by myself that, the rest of the world is there to just basically service for my feelings, and I'm not there to service for them, and if it is, it's all cosmetic.
Yeah. I feel bad talking about another, artist while we have you. But there's a song by Tiana Taylor called Lose Each Other, which is very similar to the point of, do you want to lose what we have? Like this friendship, this moment, the life. And it's like, is it really worth it? You know, being, I don't know, like we were saying earlier, just, is it really worth it to be nasty to someone back?
Well, I think it
Like-
depends on the situation. I think it depends upon the psychology of the people that are involved in that.
True. It's
know,
different if it's a friendship or a relationship or.
Yeah, I think, I think sometimes it's important to really go back to what we talked about earlier. How much do you really value the person that you're with?
Yeah.
If you don't value them and they don't provide value, they're not helping you, then you should cut them out.
Yeah.
If it's somebody that you really are friends with, we're all going to have disagreements. And sometimes those disagreements can get blown out of proportion.
Yeah.
And like anything else, sometimes you need to like take some time away from each other, calm things down, and, get back and really take the time to understand, is this somewhere or someone I want to be with?
Yeah. And if
And
it is.
not just spouse, but friend or anything else.
And if you decide that is someone, you can go and try and fight for that. But if it's not reciprocated, because relationships are two-way streets, if it's not reciprocated on the other side, it'll hurt you because you did value that person, but there's just a disconnect.
See, for me, I'm always more interested in where does this all come from? Like this person's psychology, or so I always like to try to find out to go to the root of every single thing possible, and then try to come up with a great sort of general theme that can be relatable through that.
Yeah.
So that's kind of like the way we always kind of have our mindset.
Well, I like what you both just said about, going through the motions, wanting this ideal relationship or friendship or what have you. And, when things just aren't reciprocated, you need to cut them out or you need to move on for your own personal health and well-being. Taking that to a bigger picture point of view, how would you reconcile wanting an ideal world with knowing not everything can be fixed?
You start small. Start where you can. Do the little stuff, because it builds. It builds. And when you do the little stuff like that, like say, I don't know, you're trying to build a greener earth. Let's go for that, for instance. You recycle. You go down to the recycling plant. You meet other people who recycle. And then, you get that community going. You can always find community in anything you're passionate in.
Well, I think you got to find a mix, I think, between where your talents are, where your passions are, and what you're interested in. And I think the main thing is if you can find that, something that you really do enjoy, you'll take the time to perfect it, and through that, you kind of build your own character through that. I think it's small steps like you're talking about, but it could be in any realm that works towards, it's basically reciprocal to the individual.
Yes.
And I think if people do that, and I think sometimes like if you do love something, like if you like the best example, like Lenny loves technology, the world could crumble around him. You can have influencers trying to get every negative thing in his mind that if he looked at it, he'd be provoked in the most negative way.
Yeah, Reddit
and be
is the
pissed
devil.
off, screaming at the car and everything else. But at the same time, he knows what he likes. He's got a lot of it in his house. I can always imagine this huge room just stuffed with like cameras and just gadgets and everything else.
Lenny is our Freddy from iCarly. Let's be honest.
Well, but I think it's important to never discard the innate love of trying to constantly improve your skill set. And it's a lifetime accomplishment. And it's a lifetime of trying to perfect yourself in little different ways. But if you have something like that, I see many people that are always looking for that something that's missing into themselves, and they never seem to find it. They always switch from one thing to the next, looking for this or looking for that.
Because they fill it up with things that they think are going to help, but they don't. They just make it worse.
Yeah, but they're always, it goes back to finding those three things I was talking about before. If you can find that and take those small steps, then I think, you will contribute positively. I think you'll shield yourself from certain addictions that could be negative behavior.
Yeah.
And I think it's very important to have that. I still think at the end of the day, my wife always teases me constantly that, I'm very much a loner. But, and she never she understands that to some degree, that like, you need time to yourself. But a lot of that for me is that I always value that time where I can try to improve myself, and it makes me conversely become better to the people around me as much as I can. Like,
I
I'm
love
no
my
saint,
solitary time. It's great.
but everybody should have that.
Yeah.
And I think in that time, it's how you use it. I think there's always also the other balance that's very important, which is to make sure that when you have that solitary time, some of it is to regenerate and to relax, but not let that overcome you. So you still have to be doing something that's also going to be productive.
Yeah, read a book. Like you said, read a book.
But make sure that you get enough rest.
Yes.
And then make sure you can also balance that with doing something that's productive.
Exactly.
So, I mean, it gets back to like what we're talking about, that the theme for like this week's podcast would basically be balance. Yeah. And it's so essential. You can always, you can argue about everything we talked about, like not compromising, but what is compromise? Yeah. Compromise is a balance. We're trying to figure out, you feel this way, I feel this way.
Exactly.
And if ultimately we're going to end up somewhere here if we're ever going to get along for whatever it is. Like we're stuck in that way where we have to get along. Yeah. Well, if we're not going to be in this area, it's never going to work out, and all that's going to happen is we're just going to be miserable.
Exactly.
So balance is to me is you can never really debate for the most part. The balance is like one of the things that I think is one of the best virtues in the world.
Yeah. If you're going to be alone all the time and be a loner, be stuck in your ways, but in this world, you need people to survive.
Sociable beings.
Social, yeah. And you're going to have to balance things. Yeah, well, you're not going to agree with everybody.
This is a topic we're going to talk about in one of our next podcasts. I don't know if it's the next one, but it is a very powerful negative thing that can be a health crisis as well for some people. Mm-hmm. And I think that's one thing that we talk about is developing great social skills. And I think that that's something that's very important. I think that's something that, like with these songs, and I think with these podcasts, I think that's one thing we're trying to convey to people as much as we can.
Yeah. Going off that, what is something small that people can do to stay more connected to themselves and to others? Excuse me.
I think writing. During COVID, I was just, as so many were, just bored, depressed, nothing to do. So I started writing short stories and just little letters to myself, not even to myself, to like random people. Sometimes I'm like, I am an 1864, Irish immigrant or something, whatever. So I'm like writing a story about that. I'm like writing their journey, just little stuff that would spark your creativity.
Well, I think it goes from person to person. I think the best thing people can do is do what you're doing. Like, you let kids have this gameplay, free time where they're not looking or being influenced and they're just in the world, the physical world around them. Yeah. And they can like do the craziest things, take a spoon, turn it into a person that's a time traveler, they can go off on such a tangent, and it's so great and so healthy. And I think those are the little things. Yeah. Again, it's like a lot of the reasons people ask me, why do you still want to do music? Or why do you still have to do this? Or why do you have to do something that's creative? Yeah. But part of it's like, and why I like to do it with my kids, especially when they're younger, is there is an inner child in us. And we should never forget that. That's going to always keep you young. It's always going to keep you looking and feeling like you're still a young person coming into this world. Because I don't care how smart. I run into some of these guys, finance people that know everything. They know everything. There's no point even talking to these people because they know everything. They know my job way better than I do. They just, of course, those are the people that I'm going to respect the most. Wow, like you're so smart, dude. That doesn't matter. Yeah. But like, I just think it's kind of funny that like there's always things we don't know. And I think the curious, wise person will always remind themselves that there's more and more to learn. Go to a library, you can always find things that you can read about. There's always things you can learn about. There's things that are subjects that are so beyond that you can still investigate it. You can ask about random people in the world and random subjects in the world.
Yep.
And I think it's those type of things to constantly have a curious mind.
I love randomly talking to old people at parties. Because they have seen the world, baby.
You like to randomly talk to many people, so
no,
you're
many
a curious
people for
mind
sure.
from that side.
But I just love hearing about people's lives. It's just so interesting because you're like, what have they gone through? And this lady told me she was in the Vietnam War. And I was like, you kidding me? She's like, nope, and told me all about it over drinks.
the other thing you could do is you could look at people, come up with a story of where you think that they came from, and then talk to them and figure out where they came from, and it might be two totally different things. So there's like the world is great. If you can use your imagination, you can make your world a much more interesting, better, and colorful place.
As we wrap up our podcast, what's the biggest takeaway you want people to walk away from after listening to this conversation?
I would like people to sit with themselves. No phones, no nothing. Just throw it in the laundry chute for an hour. Just sit with yourself. Go outside. You can go out. Just leave your phone behind and just see how your day is. Or if you can do an hour, great. If you can spend a whole day without your phone, phenomenal. Because I do that all the time. It is the best thing ever.
How are they going to watch us then?
They're going to watch us. They can watch us every other day of the week, baby. I'm just saying. Give yourself an hour.
No, I know. I think one thing that's good is it's good to just be able to express yourself. And I think it's great to touch on honest, true subjects. And I think that's something that's like very important. And do it where it's fun. And I think it's a blast coming here, being around people that are curious and great and have well intentions. And, I think that we have to remind ourselves these type of things. And I think that, discussing these type of various subjects, there's so much to talk about. And I think it's great when people are open-minded and can just basically speak freely and not feel any type of repercussions that they're going to say something that's going to touch somebody off in the wrong way. That's never the intention in this environment.
Yes.
And, and at the same time, we should be thankful that we all can be here. And, that I think everybody brings something different to the table. Everybody's coming from a different road, a different angle.
Different life.
Yeah. And, we're all here. That's the only thing. And one thing that's interesting, we're all 4 native Southern Californians that are actually in this room, which is a rarity. We don't see that. Everybody else that was here earlier today actually is not really native to the area. So this week's podcast is basically 4 Angelinos.
I'm like,
just kind of shooting the shit. Yeah, West Coast. So I just wanted to say thank you to everybody for arranging this date. Again, I hope you can follow us on www.strippedown.band.com. We're on Instagram. We're on TikTok. We're on Spotify, Apple Music.
There it is.
We're everywhere, baby.
We're trying to be everywhere and trying to just do our best to spread some good thoughts. And I just want to thank everybody for joining us on this ride.
Well, thank you so much for having me, Antony.
Well, and we'll be back. We'll do another one with you soon.
Listen, we'll be
Spencer,
back, guys.
Thank you again for answering the questions.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you to Lenny, him and his technology, Best Buy, Amazon, in this case, wherever he gets all of his stuff. But wow.
Like everything. You got everything.
He's got everything. So thank you again. Bless you all.